From Prohibition in 1920 through the 1960s, Newport had the dubious nickname Sin City. Unlike any town in America before or since, Sin City was a mecca for true crime tales. At the heart of Newport's reputation were ties to the mafia, which basically controlled the city after the downfall of bootleg king George Remus in the mid-1920s. The mob and a variety of gangsters then built and operated a network of brothels, illegal booze joints, and gambling dens that littered the city. Even after a wave of efforts to clean up Newport in the early 1960s, many casinos just converted from gambling to adult entertainment. Prostitution became the area's #1 vice. On July 30th, 1972, Newport police responded to a shooting at an antique shop on East 6th Street. An employee of the notorious Pink Pussycat nightclub across the street had found 46-year-old store owner Sammy Eisner dead in the bathroom. He'd been shot 3 times at close range, twice by .45 caliber bullets, and in the temple by a 9mm. To outsiders, the shocking murder seemed like a heinous crime against a local small business owner. However, Newport authorities knew Eisner as a longtime underworld figure. The shabby antique store actually served as Eisner's criminal lair. Sammy Eisner had an extensive criminal record dating back to the 1940s. By the 1950s, Eisner was reportedly managing infamous Newport clubs and specializing in gambling and brothels. He'd been arrested more than 35 times, but allegedly had powerful friends in city government. His wife, Callie Blaine Eisner, had opened Newport's first strip club in the early 1960s. She'd been a dancer herself, sharing the stage with Gypsy Rose Lee, perhaps America's most famous burlesque queen, later becoming an actress and TV talk show host. A police investigation revealed that Eisner had been in his wife's club until 1:15 a.m. He took a phone call, rushed out the door, then across the street. Minutes later, Eisner was gunned down. In the aftermath of the shooting, authorities feared a state of lawlessness as rival gangsters battled for control of the adult entertainment turf. Newport police called in Kentucky State troopers who patrolled for the next 10 days to quell any unrest. After an exhaustive investigation, police called the murder a contract job, but made no arrests. Callie Eisner continued to run the club after her husband's death. That is, until a fire on Christmas Eve 1975 burnt it to the ground. Police called it arson, but could not determine who set that fire. The following year, some 4 years after her husband's murder, Callie Eisner was convicted in federal court for running a prostitution ring, along with 2 other nightclub owners and 4 Newport police officers. She stayed in the area, passing away in Fort Thomas in 2004. Quite the story, and I want to welcome back the crown prince of crime, cultural historian Bob Batchelor. Bob, thanks so much for being with us this morning. That actually was kind of a great find there in that story, because I'd not heard of Sammy Eisner after years around this area. So tell me a little bit, though, about whether they actually caught Eisner's murderers.
Good morning, Clyde. Well, the crazy thing is that if Eisner's killers were young men, they're still among us. And though police were able to determine that this was a paid professional hit, a gangland-style murder, it's still open to this day. There have been no deathbed confessionals, and nobody has ever come forward to claim this murder.
So, Bob, let's talk a little bit about what you described in our pre-show conversation as this crime being something of a watershed moment, right?
Yeah, this is really seen as a turning point for Newport. Eisner's death, in many ways, was the final straw. Newport citizens had had enough. And though it would take them about another decade to really enact and sweep out the sin from Sin City, they were able to pass laws that really cleared out the bad elements of the city, which led to its rebirth that you talked about at the beginning. The Newport skyline would be totally different today, I think, if they weren't able to really get the bad guys out of town. And so Eisner, though his death is still unsolved, did act as kind of a catalyst for turning around Newport.
Back to the question I asked you earlier about the status of the case. You and I, again, touched on this briefly. How is the case? So the case is still open. Is it still under active investigation?
I'm not sure about that one. I mean, it would be interesting to look back after all these years, but it was such a professional hit. I mean, there were two different kinds of guns, two different kind of bullets that killed Eisner, and nobody ever knows who made that phone call or what the person said to get Eisner to rush back over to his antique shop. But he left the club right away and went back over, and that led to his demise. There was a $500 reward, and there were some leads back in 1972, but nobody could ever patch anything together to make an arrest. And I doubt it would be possible today to, unless there's a deathbed confessional. I can't imagine this one ever being solved.
I love the way you tell these stories. So how can other people who love that too read more of these true crime stories, or any other of your books for that matter?
Well, certainly find me at my website. I'm also on Twitter. I'm very easy to find online, and readers and viewers keep sending me great story ideas. So if you have a true crime or a favorite one that you've heard of, please drop it in the Facebook video notes, and we'll investigate. But keep those stories coming.
All right, Bob, always a pleasure having you on the show.